Welcome to the SNN.Network Canada virtual event. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Michael McFadden, CEO of Alpha Cognition. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to share an update on Alpha Cognition and some of the advancements in our current pipeline. I'll be using forward-looking statements. Please consult this slide for the implications of those. For those of you who aren't aware of Alpha Cognition, we're a late-stage biopharmaceutical company. We're focused on neurodegenerative diseases. We have a pipeline of 3 products. It's led by Alpha 1062. That is a new treatment for mild to moderate Alzheimer's dementia. And we believe we formulated our product to be a best-in-class treatment designed to optimize efficacious dose, to minimize treatment-limiting side effects that occur with most of the agents approved today, and to also improve long-term outcomes that many patients with Alzheimer's suffer from. The market is a very large market. In the U.S., 11 million prescription market. It's characterized, or some would say plagued by, high turnover of patients. About a third of patients discontinue their therapy today once they start treatment by month 4. Now, we are initiating pivotal study this quarter. We have already, with approval targeted for our product the first half of 2023. So we consider that we're a late-stage company with a de-risk platform already initiating pivotal study. Why do we say de-risk? We've pursued a 505(b)(2) path for our drug, and we believe that gives us a very high probability of success. For those of you who aren't familiar with 505(b)(2), it's bioequivalence, and I'll go into the requirements that the FDA imposes upon us for approval. We're supplementing our 505(b)(2) pathway with safety and tolerability data. That will allow us to differentiate the product commercially when we're on the market and price it at an appropriate price. We have patents extending past 2040, and we're adding to our patent portfolio every month. I'll talk about the pipeline momentarily. I'll make a comment about the team. You can't deliver great results in this business without a great team. Our team has over 250 drug approvals and over 50 years of cumulative experience in neurology, 20 product launches. About half of those have been billion-dollar products. So a bit more about the pipeline. I've talked about Alpha 1062, by the way, that's the enteric-coated tablet. We've initiated pivotal study with that program, and we expect top-line results in Q2 of 2022. That will put us on track for NDA filing in Q3 of 2022. Now, we have a follow-on lifecycle program with this Alpha 1062 plus memantine. That's a combination product that we would seek approval for moderate to severe Alzheimer's dementia. If successful, with both programs, that would allow us to compete from diagnosis all the way to end of life, and that's about an $8 billion U.S. market. We have 2 early-stage programs as well. Mild traumatic brain injury. We released data on that program yesterday, so for those of you who are interested in learning more, you can see our press release on that program. The results were stellar. We exceeded vehicle in all measures, and we were equal to uninjured animals in 4 out of 5 measures. So we're very pleased with the results that were demonstrated in that study. Of note, on that mild traumatic brain injury program, we've completed all our safety and toxicity, our phase 1 work. So this could result in an accelerated path to development and ultimately approval. We also have an early-stage program with gene therapy. That's we're seeking indication and approval for ALS. That's a disease with 100% morbidity in need of treatment, and we have a progranulin gene therapy that we're in early-stage program this quarter that will release top-line results on in Q1 of 2022. Now, a bit about Alzheimer's disease. It's a progressive neurodegenerative disease. There is no cure. There are few treatments. It's characterized by a number of symptoms that drive people in to see their doctor. One of those is ability to remember things or memorize items, ability to function normally, and we know the disease negatively impacts learning. That's driven by a decrease in acetylcholine, and I'll talk about the implications of that with our therapy. Alzheimer's affects about 6 million people in the U.S. There's a tremendous amount of dollars and resources spent to treat or manage disease. And of note, about 8 out of 10 patients with disease are started on acetylcholinesterase inhibitor as their first-line therapy. And you'll see that in the third column on this slide. That's ACHEI. That stands for acetylcholinesterase. They're standard of care. They have been for a decade. Market research says they will be for the next decade. It's interesting to note, though, that only about half of the patients started on those therapies remain on them at the end of 12 months. That's primarily due to side effects and tolerability issues that patients suffer from. So what is our program and our drug? Alpha 1062 is a prodrug of galantamine. It's been formulated to decrease side effects and increase bioavailability, or the amount of drug circulating in the brain. How have we done it? We formulated the drug with a benzyl ester, which eliminates ACH inhibition. We've added a gluconate salt to increase solubility. We've encoded that with enteric-coated tablet that dissolves just at the right time to release the benzyl ester. So what happens when you take the drug? It's an oral drug, so when you swallow the pill, it goes into the GI tract, and it's absorbed in the small intestine inactively. So it has, we believe that's responsible for minimal or no side effects seen with Alpha 1062 to date. It's then metabolized in the liver, where it's subject to first-pass effect. The benzyl esters there is cleaved, and that results in the release of galantamine, the active moiety which circulates in the brain. And we tested the product. We demonstrated 15% increase in bioavailability. It sounds simple, but it's actually quite complex to be able to manufacture and develop the program. So take a closer look at what happens with current treatments and our drug. So you see the wavy brown line on this slide. This is a illustration of the intestinal wall. So when an oral product, an oral acetylcholinesterase inhibitor is taken, it goes into the GI tract. On the left side, if you took Aricept or you took Exelon, those products are absorbed into the small intestinal wall. There they bind to acetylcholinesterase. That increases acetylcholine levels, which overstimulates the local neurons in the intestinal wall. We believe that's responsible for the nausea, the vomiting, and the diarrhea that's commonly seen with these agents. Alpha 1062 is also absorbed, same pathway, but it's inert, meaning it exerts no activity, no overstimulation of those local neurons, and we have seen to date no nausea, diarrhea, or vomiting with our product. That's very meaningful for physicians who treat patients and for caregivers who help manage the patient. Now, what happens in the brain? So on the right, you'll see a blown up look at the pre- and postsynaptic clefts in the brain so you can understand what happens with our drug. On the left side is a normal brain. The little yellow dots demonstrate acetylcholine that's free-flowing in the synapse of the brain. Acetylcholinesterase inhibitors block or push out more acetylcholine into that synapse, thereby attempting to restore normal functioning. Our drug does the same. But our drug also affects the alpha-7 nicotinic receptor. It binds allosterically to that receptor, and you see that on the right side. That is illustrated by the B. So it's not only pushing more acetylcholine into the synapse, it's binding to the alpha-7 nicotinic receptor. That does several things. One is it stimulates the cholinergic pathway. We believe it modulates inflammation, and it could have a buffering effect on amyloid. Just as importantly, if not more importantly, it affects and enhances the release of other neurotransmitters like GABA, glutamate, dopamine, serotonin. And the impact of that is it results in increased memory acquisition, attention, stabilization of behavior, and some other attributes and benefits. So we believe the multimodal receptor opportunity that our drug delivers offers physicians and patients potential enhancement of symptomatology of disease. Now, what do we have to do or demonstrate to have an approvable drug or have the ability to submit an NDA? We have to demonstrate bioequivalence, that's BADE trial. So we show data on the right of what has been demonstrated with our product. And we have to demonstrate AUC, Cmax versus a reference drug. And so you can see the data that we've accumulated versus Razidine, which is the innovator drug, with two formulations of Alpha 1062, a sublingual and enteric-coated. The AUC and the Cmax that will be required in our pivotal trial have already been demonstrated, and they are consistent with the innovator reference drug. So we have to demonstrate this again in a study design that I'll show momentarily. And if we do that, we have the data set that we could present to the FDA for approval. On the left side, I mentioned bioavailability several times. This is a chart that demonstrates that bioavailability. You can see the alpha 1062 graph exceeding razidine, about 15% improved bioavailability. Now here's a look at the study design that will guide our bioequivalence study. It's a single dose crossover design under fed and fasted conditions. Patients are screened, there's 7-day washout, they're dosed, and then bioanalysis takes place. We'll be measuring bioequivalence to the reference drug. Now this study is very straightforward. It's quantified by blood draws and data. We believe that provides a low risk opportunity for a successful study. We're supplementing that with patient data. The patient data will be a look at several things. One, dosing of our drug, and also tolerability of our drug, and the study will be completed in Alzheimer's patients. This is data that we'll seek to replicate with that study. It's a look at alpha 1062 single dose and the side effects that are observed with our drug. And we put for reference only the razidine single dose data and the razidine pooled AE data. In single dose, you can see our drug has 0 side effects, 0 diarrhea, 0 nausea, 0 vomiting. Razidine single dose, 28% of patients suffer from side effects, and as they're multi-dose, that exceeds 40%. So we will attempt to replicate this data in Alzheimer's patients over time with multiple doses and demonstrate side effects that are equal with placebo. And then we'll attempt to demonstrate long-term data, which is very impressive for galantamine with reduced long-term care placement or 24/7 care, and ultimately decrease in morbidity and progression of disease. So this is a study by Dr. Feldman and associates looking at galantamine treatment over time versus placebo. And the takeaway on this study was that with each year of treatment of galantamine, you reduce the risk of nursing home admission by 31%. Over the course of 3 years, you can see the dotted yellow or dotted line showing that only 20% of galantamine patients needed institutional care versus 70% of placebo patients. So drug is obviously having an effect. And then the most recent study came out in April 2021. Independent study, 40,000 patients out of Europe, evaluation period of 10 years, 5-year follow-up with all the acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. Very powerful data set. Galantamine in this study was shown with a lower risk of death or lower risk of all-cause mortality compared to untreated patients. It was superior to the other drugs in the study. And it had the strongest effect on cognitive decline. In fact, it was the only drug that demonstrated a stat-sig reduction in the risk of developing severe disease. That could be due to the multimodal receptor activity that it is demonstrating, which is unique in this particular class. So we'll seek to demonstrate this type of data long-term with the registry post-approval. If we're able to replicate this data, it's game-changing for the market and for our drug. So entering the class, we're often asked, how will alpha 1062 compare to the other drugs on the market? So we've listed some of the items that we think are meaningful to physicians, to caregivers, and to payers that we'll seek to demonstrate and be able to promote when we launch the product. First is onset of activity and initiating therapy at an efficacious dose. We believe our trial success will demonstrate these items, and they would be in our label. I've talked about the reduction in GI side effects. We have a trial that will be initiated to demonstrate placebo-like side effects, and importantly, galantamine has shown no nausea, no insomnia. Other agents, that is quite a problem, and we'll seek to capture that data in our trial so that we can promote that difference. I talked about the dual mechanism of action that's meaningful to physicians. That's something we'll petition the agency to be in our label, and then long-term we'll seek to replicate the data sets you just saw, risk reduction and progression to severe dementia and in progression to 24/7 care or nursing home care. If we can demonstrate some of these differences, it is meaningful to physicians and it allows us to price premium the product. Now, a little bit about the market. There have been multiple Alzheimer's launches over time. This is a data set that overlays the launch curves of all the drugs that have launched in the last decade. And I think the takeaway here is drug after drug demonstrates blockbuster success. You can see multiple drugs have exceeded $1 billion, some exceeded $2 billion, and almost every drug exceeded $500 million. So this is indicative of a drug class or a therapeutic area that is in need of new therapy. And it's also a result, we believe, of dissatisfaction with the current agents that are on the market, leading them to seek new treatment. And then how would we launch the product if approved? This is a great opportunity for a small company like ours to launch successfully. And I say that because the prescriptions by specialty are highly concentrated in neurologists and long-term care physicians. They account for 2/3 of the market. They treat and change therapies for most patients. We can do that very successfully with a very targeted sales force to those two specialties. And then the market itself is a very interesting market in that very large number of scripts, over 11 million, and most of the patients are started on these types of therapies when they're diagnosed with Alzheimer's. We also like the market because of very high discontinuation rate for any of the therapies that are on the market. 30% by month 4, almost half of patients discontinue treatment by the first year, and that's mainly due to side effects or inability to get to a therapeutic dose. So that offers an opportunity to launch with differentiation points and capture market share from the other agents that are on the market. And then how will we do it? We'll differentiate with the key points that I mentioned earlier in that checkmark slide, exploit the issues with the current agents, and then as we lead into launch, we'll be focused on a highly targeted and efficient multi-channel marketing campaign. We can do that very efficiently today, both with caregivers and physicians. And then we'll be educating and communicating with payers to make sure that our pricing is consistent with the pricing that's expected in the class. The good news is the payers don't highly manage this therapeutic area. They see the need for new therapy, and they're willing to allow a price premium if there's differentiation with the product. So in summary, the Alpha 1062 is a very compelling opportunity. We're entering a very large but highly dissatisfied market, $5 billion branded price market with high discontinuation with all the current agents. Our drug solves some of those problems with potential reduced GI side effects, low or no titration, and delayed placement into nursing home care. We offer a de-risked clinical program, bioequivalence study. Will be required for us to file an NDA, and we're going to supplement that with great patient data that will allow us to differentiate the product commercially. Now, there are a number of near-term milestones that are going to occur. Our pivotal trial has already started. Our tolerability trial will be underway in the first half of 2022, and we would be filing an NDA submission in Q3 of 2022. Now, a little bit more about the pipeline. I'll share a little detail here. I mentioned the combination product, Alpha 1062 plus memantine. That will allow us to expand into moderate to severe Alzheimer's. That's about a 7.5 to 8 million prescription market. So if you dollarize, that's worth about additional $3 billion. Mild, moderate, and severe together equates to about $8 billion market. So very large market, high discontinuation, need for new products. And then a bit about our early stage program. I talked about our mild traumatic brain injury. What's next for that program likely will be a dose finding study and then an IND submission for that program. that'll depend on agency feedback. We do have an additional data set that'll be coming out in the first quarter of 2022. It'll be the second part of our preclinical work, so look for that data readout in the first quarter of 2022. And then with 602, we're really excited about this program, our gene therapy program. The study is underway. We'll be releasing top-line data that looks at survivability and impact on number of proteins, TDP-43, and a number of other proteins for that program, and that will also be released in first quarter of 2022. So if you're an investor and you're thinking about a company like ours, why would you invest? One, de-risk clinical program. We have accelerated path to approval. It's really about execution at this point, and we're entering a large untapped market, significant patient physician dissatisfaction. We believe we solved a lot of those issues with our program. We're using our capital very efficiently. Capital burn is low, and we are executing our programs as we've outlined, and we have a long patent estate if we're successful with our programs that we can commercialize the product. I mentioned our team earlier. Just want to echo 250 drug approvals, 20 commercial launches, and we've added most recently Cedric O'Gorman as Chief Medical Officer. Cedric will oversee our patient tolerability trial and some of our other programs that we begin in 2022. A huge addition for the company. He most previously was at Axsome and then had previous stints at Genentech and Pfizer. So what are the catalysts that are upcoming for investors with our company? 2022 promises to be the most compelling year for Alpha Cognition, whereby we'll have top-line results of all of our programs, full results of MTBI in Q1, top-line results of Alpha 602 in Q1, top-line results of Alpha 1062 in Q2. We'll begin enrollment of our 1062 label-enabling study in Q2, and we'll submit an NDA in Q3 for Alpha 1062. And then we have a number of other catalysts that are just not time-bound that we'll be releasing throughout the year. So a very exciting opportunity and time for our company and for the investors who have invested in our company. If there are questions, you're welcome to reach out to Glenn, the Bristol team, who are supporting us on the IR front. I'll stop here and open it up for questions. Here are a couple of questions. I'll just start clicking these off and answering them. One is, can you talk more about your recent TBI data and what else we can expect to hear on that pipeline program? It's a great question. So we recently released neurobehavioral data, and that data was as good as the data can be with the early part of the study. Next, we will look at the neurophysiology impact of drug on the brain, and we'll be releasing the results of that data in Q1. And then we may be able to provide a little more data on the behavioral neural outcomes. Next for that program would be a dose-finding study and then ultimately an IND in 2022. Here's a second question. What does Aduhelm approval mean for the industry? So the Aduhelm approval reinvigorated the investment community with regards to Alzheimer's. Prior to the approval, I think most people felt like it was very difficult and challenging to get a drug approved, and I think that reinvigorated the investment community, seeing that a drug can get approved with a sub-data set. Agree with it or not, it brought a lot of energy back into the market for not only Alzheimer's but CNS in general. And it certainly has played out for our company in that the interest has increased exponentially since that approval occurred. Next question. Can you discuss a little more why you don't need to show efficacy for FDA approval? It's a great question. So we've taken a 505(b)(2) approach. 505(b)(2) requirements by the agency are that we show bioequivalence. Bioequivalence is characterized as AUC, area under the curve, and Cmax. So if we demonstrate those two items equivalent to a reference drug, we do not have to show efficacy or run an efficacy trial. And why? The why behind that is that our drug in the brain behaves like galantamine from an FDA perspective, If we're behaving like galantamine, then that's already an approved drug, then we don't need to re-demonstrate efficacy. Here's the next question. Can you talk about capital market strategy, cash burn, future needs, U.S. listing expectation? Great question. So we just raised $10.7 million in October. We have about $15 million in capital. Current burn rate is $2 to $3 million per quarter. So we have cash to move us deep into 2022. I'm often asked, in fact, every week I'm asked, when will we consider dual list or a NASDAQ list? That's definitely something that's under consideration for the company. We believe that most biotechs, to fully realize valuation and to access capital markets to further the clinical programs and commercialization of those programs, that the best route to do that is NASDAQ. So that's certainly something that is a goal for the company. Next question. What is your vision for the company? Where would you like it to be in the next 2 to 3 years? It's a great question. So what we anticipate for this company is that we can be fully integrated CNS company with an approved product and multiple assets in mid-stage development and late-stage development within just 3 years. Why do I say that? Alpha 1062 is late stage. We can be approved in 2023. We have a life cycle program that we can speed development by taking another 505(b)(2) path for that program. So that would be considered a second late-stage compound. Secondly, if our programs continue to progress on TBI and our progranulin franchise, we would be potentially in mid-stage with both of those programs because the need to treat, no approved therapy, and the fact that we've already completed our tox and safety data on the TBI side. So that moves us, could move us very quickly, depending on agency feedback, into a phase 2 or phase 2/3 trial for TBI. So we're well on our way to execute those things, and in 2-3 years, I think the future is very, very bright for our company and certainly investors who have invested in the company. See if there are any more questions. Okay, I think that is it, and I see that we're up on time. Thank you all for attending the program. Again, if there are additional questions, welcome you to reach out to the company or Bristol, and we'll be happy to answer them. Have a great day.